Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I have for you my July reading journal video. Apologies, it is a little bit late just from, life getting in the way a little bit in August. So I use an A5 Yop and Tom journal for my reading journal in the blush pink colour. I love the colour, but the journal does get really dirty, so I will be looking for an alternative for next year. I think I'm still a bit on the fence about what I want to do for that. But I do have other videos up on my channel where I set up all these first few pages, so do check that out if you want me to talk about the journal in a bit more detail. So the first things that I'm doing here are updating all my trackers at the beginning of my journal. So first up I have my 100 in 2023, which is my 100 books, and I'm colouring these in based on the genre/type of book. It makes absolutely no sense, so I will be redoing this for next year. And these are the Heartstopper leaves. I bought this as a printout from Etsy, so I just made it opaque, printed it out and stuck it in. It doesn't work that well because the ink smudges with pens, unfortunately, so I will need to think of something else for next year. I then also have my bookshelf tracker, which is like my favourite thing in this journal. These stickers are from Thumbelina Print, who I get most of my stickers from for my journal. So I would really recommend Thumbelina Print if you haven't checked them out yet. I colour these in based on the star rating that I gave the book. So I read a lot in July, so we do have a lot to talk about. I hope you are ready with a drink and a snack. Unfortunately, I think the colour coding doesn't work perfectly for this because I rate a lot of books 0.5s and this doesn't reflect that. So you can see that by far the majority of the shelf is blue and yellow, which is 3 and 4. So next year when I redo this, I think if I still colour these in based on star rating, I will be updating this to include more colours for my 0.5 ratings, just so it's a bit more visually interesting. Though the colour scheme I went for with this planner was like Heartstopper colours, and so there is an element of only a certain number of colours go with that, so I'll have to see what I think for next year. You will notice that one book doesn't have a colour rating for this month, and that is because I listened to the audiobook for Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. I don't really feel a need to talk about this book given everything that surrounds this author, but also I didn't feel I could give it a rating because this book has been in my life for the majority of my life, and how I feel about listening to it now is different to when I first read it, and I just think it's really weird to rate. So I just haven't rated it, and I'm also not going to talk about it. I think I stuck a picture of the cover in this spread, but I don't need to talk about the book. But otherwise, we did have a bit of an interesting reading month in July, so it should be interesting when we get into the books. So here I'm updating my 23 and 2023. I only read The Sad Ghost Club from that list, so it was a very easy update. And I also keep forgetting when I print out all the stuff for these spreads that I need to fill out my colour one, my rainbow challenge. I'm sure I've completed it, but I just haven't printed off everything. So next year I won't be doing that as a yearly challenge because I just don't think to update it as we go through the year. I'll probably do it next June as a Pride challenge, I think. So just do it in the 1 month. Then I was also updating my series trackers. Again, I don't think I'm going to be having that in my journal next year. I'm much better updating that on my spreadsheet from Book Roast that I adapted, the core pile spreadsheet. So I will not have that physically, I don't think, because it just is too difficult for me to keep up with in this journal. So now what I'm doing is my July cover page, again using stickers from Thumbelina Print, and then I am sticking down the book covers for the books that I read this month. All I do for these is just copy and paste the book cover into a Google Doc and print it off on sticker paper and cut them out. It's really nothing interesting or exciting. My reading journal is very low maintenance in the hope that I can inspire you to start these kind of things in as low maintenance as me. So as you can see, there is a lot of books. I think that this page looks cute but messy. There's just was a lot to put down and I hadn't really thought about how I was going to fit it all. So I ended up putting 4 of them at the bottom, which were the 4 books that I read in my Barbie reading vlog. So that is a reading vlog that is up on my channel if you want to check that out, where I read all pink books for my birthday month. So 2 of the covers I appreciate don't look pink, but the spine of the first one is pink and the second one I have the pink cover version. So they actually are very pink. So that was what I ended up doing on this page. Then let's get into my stats for the month. So the July sticker is from Plannerface. I do PR for Plannerface. You can use my code CAT to save 10% on your orders there. And then underneath that, I have 2 stickers from the Coffee Monsters Co. So I'm running out of colours for those. I feel like they do not go with this spread at all, because I've kind of just picked colours based on what I see in the July, but then my graphs are very blue, so it doesn't quite work, but it's fine. I'm not too bothered. So for my stats, in terms of my reading method, I read 9 physical books this month, listened to 2 on audio, and I only add here books I have completed in the month, just to let you know. So I do have an audiobook carrying on into August. And then I read 4 ebooks. I'm in my ebook era, people. My fiance is getting me a Kindle for my birthday, which has already passed, but it's not actually arriving until his birthday because it's delayed. But I am so in my ebook era. I am now reading ARCs for NetGalley, so you'll see me talk about those this month as well. And it's just been so fun. The issue with it is, though, the way my personality is means I'm just requesting loads of ARCs. I got approved for loads of ARCs I wasn't expecting to, and now I have a really big NetGalley shelf. So that is less than ideal. But I have been really enjoying reading ARCs, so yeah, you will see an increase in ebooks from me going forward, especially once I've got my own Kindle. I do just read on Stuart Soul Kindle now, to be honest. So then for series and standalone, 11 of them were series, but 4 of them were standalone, so that's exciting. I kind of expect they were the 4 ARCs, but how much do you want to bet that they'll get a series later on, just to hurt me? For genre, I read 5 fantasy, which is impressive, and I cannot think what they are, but I guess things like Lore Olympus I count as fantasy. Legendborn I finished at the very beginning of the month, and that would be fantasy, so I guess that's why. I felt like I was actually reading a lot of romance. 9 romance, and 1 contemporary, which was probably a romance that I just felt meant more contemporary. For the days it took to read the book, this is one of my favourite graphs. So you can see that Legendborn took 29 days to read, because I was actually reading it for the majority of June. I just finished it at the beginning of July. Belladonna was the next with 20. That's because I listened to it on audio, so it always takes me longer if I listen to it on audio. And then Harry Potter I also listened to on audio, so that was 16. Everything else was not too bad. Love Theoretically took me 5 days to read, which is madness. And then ACOTAR took me 8, but the others were relatively straightforward. For the book length, other than Legendborn, which was over 500 pages, which is why it took me so long, everything was kind of on par. I would say somewhere kind of between 350 and 400 pages. We had a couple of shorter ones though, so Bell's Tale was a manga. Harry Potter, obviously, being the first one, was shorter, and then The Sad Ghost Club was a graphic novel, so a bit shorter. For the book format, I read 11 novels, pretty normal, 2 graphic novels, 1 novella, and 1 manga. I don't read a lot of novellas, so it'll be interesting for us to talk about that one. For how I got the book, 10 of them were owned, or sort of on my own TBR, but I could have bought them that month. I don't track that hard. 2 of them I listened to on Audible, and then, as I say, I got very much into my ARCs, so 3 of them were ARCs, and so that's a new category that I will be adding in going forward. For where I purchased them from, so this looks so messy on the page when I write it all in, unfortunately, because there was just a lot to fit in, so I need to have a think about this. I am thinking of switching to a square Archer and Olive for next year. I feel like I might just have more space to do my spreads. So for purchase from, I got 4 from The Works, which is a shop here in the UK, which is kind of very, they sell a lot of things, like crafty things, and books and pens and that kind of thing, but they're very cheap books. If you've never been into the Works to buy books, it's well worth it because they are very affordable. Listen to 2 of them on Audible. 3 of them I purchased from Waterstones, 1 from Amazon, so that's like quite good as a ratio. I'd like to reduce the number from Amazon. 3 of them I got from NetGalley, 1 was an other, and then 1 I read on my Kindle, and so that will be increasing the more Kindle books I read. For star rating, so quite varied for this month. So I have 5 that were 4 stars, 2 5 stars, which is great, 1 4.5, 1 2.5, 3 2 stars, 2 3 stars, 2 2 stars, and 1 3.5. So very varied for July. And then for age, I read 7 adult, 5 YA, which is quite high, 2 middle grade, and 1 new adult. I'm counting ACOTAR as new adult because I just feel like that's what it is. And I think that's what it says it is on Goodreads as well. So, as we have a lot to talk about, let's start talking about the books. So, the first book that I finished in July, but I was reading it for most of June, was Legendborn by Tracy Dion. This is a fantasy YA, which is a King Arthur retelling about a girl called Bree whose mum dies, and she basically goes into this kind of state of depression. She's really acting out, and just before her mum dies, she feels just completely drawn to apply for this early college program. So she decides to go for it, and it feels almost like the thing that kind of ended her mum's life, even though it's not quite like that, but that's how it kind of feels to Brie. And she's really struggling while she's there, and she gets given a mentor, this very attractive guy called Nick, who kind of through being connected to him, she ends up discovering that there is this whole like underground world at this university where there is a like King Arthur and his knights basically living there and protecting the country from a kind of uprising of fantastical beasts, basically. And it's such an interesting book. I really recommend it, but it does take a while to get into. I would say over half of the book is very challenging, and I felt really kind of on the outside of it, and I think particularly for a YA, that makes it a bit of a difficult read because there's so much information that you're trying to consume. But I do think it's well worth it, and I really need to read the second one because I feel like if I don't, I will kind of forget everything that happened because there was just so much lore dropped on. But then because it's a 500-page book, I know it's silly to say this because clearly, as proved in July, I can read many 300-page books, but I cannot read many 500-page books. It just doesn't work the same way. They don't fly through the same as a romance. So yeah, that's the sort of downside for me of the big book. I have big book fear, definitely. But I gave this book 4 stars. As I say, I really enjoyed it, and I'm very interested to get to the second one. Then the next book I read was Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. This is the latest Ali Hazelwood book. If you haven't been around here, I am a big fan of Ali Hazelwood, other than Love on the Brain, which I did not enjoy, but I really loved Love Hypothesis. It was one of my favourite books of last year, and I need to up it to a 5-star on reflection. There's just no need for it to be 4.75. The reason I hadn't rated it 5 stars was because I didn't like the whole Olive is small and Adam is tall thing. I just felt it was used as a plot device in a way it didn't need to be, and that was ultimately then a major gripe I had with Love on the Brain. Love Theoretically, I feel like, is a little bit different in its formula, and there's a bit less of that. The guy is still massive, etc., but I felt it was kind of a little bit more varied than the others. So this one is about Elsie and Jack, and Elsie, it still has the academia setting though. Elsie is kind of outside of her academia career, where because she's struggling to make money, she is a professional fake dater, and she's fake dating this guy, but she is kind of attracted to his brother and ends up applying for a job where his brother is on the panel, but obviously she's been fake dating Jack's brother, so he's like, you are a complete liar, because he doesn't know that she is secretly fake dating his brother. So just a really interesting story, and honestly, I will love Jack till the day I die. He was just so, the way he felt about Elsie was so overwhelming, and the way that Elsie was kind of dealing with her sort of finding out who she is and the way that she approaches situations was just so, I thought this was so well written. And I love the way that Ali Hazelwood tackles steamy scenes. I think this was back to like what I expect of them. So I absolutely love this, gave it 5 stars. So it'll be really interesting to see. Ali Hazelwood is kind of changing up what she's releasing now. So we're getting a YA later this year, and then we're getting a vampire book next year. And I don't know how I feel about that, because if we could just have a curvier character, she could continue to write academia books for the rest of the time, and I would be fine with that. So I'm interested to see where we go from here. Next up, I finished listening to Belladonna by Aileen Grace. So I do own the physical book of this. I have the Fairy Loot one, but I listened to it on audio. I think I got it for free or really cheap, and I would really recommend the audio. I loved the audiobook narrator, and I will be listening to Foxglove on audio as well. I could get the book from Fairy Loot, but I just don't think I need it. I just think this is one I would always listen to on audio. So this is about Signa, who feels like she is plagued by death. Death always seems to follow her, and she ends up kind of being sent away once all her family have passed away to this house, which feels like a second chance to her, but death still feels like it's plaguing this house. And then she ends up meeting death, And it's about her sort of discovering that actually maybe her and death are linked and what this might mean for her. It's a really interesting story. It's steamy and just very interesting. I've not read anything else like this. I don't read a lot of fantasy romance, so I really enjoyed it. Gave it 4 stars, and as I say, I really recommend the audio, so I would really recommend that you have a listen to this one if you can pick it up. Next up, I read Lore Olympus Volume 4 by Rachel Smythe. This is a graphic novel series, which is a Hades and Persephone retelling, where it's set in the kind of modern day. They have like cell phones, and Hades is king of the underworld, but like it's like underworld corporation rather than necessarily the underworld. And this series is so good. I give every volume 4.5 because ultimately I think it's such a slow burn, and it's a little bit too slow a burn for me. Like, given that we've read 4 volumes at like, they cost about £20 a volume, so at about £80 worth of books that I own, I would like Hades and Persephone to have at least got a little bit further on than they are now. But I'm such a sucker for it. I absolutely love it. It's an absolute auto buy for me, which makes me think it's probably a 5-star. I'm just rating it weirdly. And I love the art. I love my time reading these. I just couldn't recommend them enough. And you can read them for free if you want to. The webcomic is available. It's just I like having the hardbacks. I like the experience of lying on my sofa reading Lore Olympus, you know? Then I read my novella. So this was Falling for Her Best Friend by Tammy Franklin. I just picked this up right when I first started buying books for BookTube from Amazon. I'm a lot more choosy about what I buy now, and this is a Kindle buy. Do not buy this physically. I just don't think it's worth it if you are going to read it. But this is about Violet, I think her name's Violet, and Cade. And Vi basically has a really horrible breakup with a boyfriend, fiance, I think. So she moves back home, and her mum lives next door to Vi's like childhood best friend, who's been in love with her his whole life. So it's about the two of them kind of reconnecting. But Vi also ends up redating her high school boyfriend, who's different to Cade. And so Cade is really jealous of this. And so it's just, I don't know. I think if this had been a full novel, it would have worked fine. But as a novella, I found it really problematic. I just felt that it was really underexplored. I didn't get enough time of Vi and Cade together to really understand their relationship. And I just did not think this story was well served as a novella. So I do not see me carrying on with this series because I just don't think it works well. So I only gave this one 2.5 stars, unfortunately. Then I read The Sad Ghost Club by Lise Meddings. This is the first one. I do own the second and third one. This is a graphic novel series about SG, which is Sad Ghost, who really struggles with social anxiety but pushes through this and goes to a party anyway. But nobody speaks to them, but they kind of force themselves onto another sad ghost called Socks, and they become friends over the course of this evening. And the concept of this is something I should like, and I like the idea of kind of looking out for your other sad ghosts as somebody who is ultimately a sad ghost. But I felt like SG really forced themselves on Socks in a way that, like, I would feel so overwhelmed to have somebody come over and speak to me like that. It just really overwhelmed me. And I didn't really realise that this was a YA. I thought it was an adult book, and I think it's quite a young YA. I would say it's middle grade, actually, rather than YA. And I struggle a little bit with middle grade books, which is fine. I'm an adult, right? I'm 31. I don't need to, middle grades are not for me. But I just felt like this one didn't really work for me in terms of the story, and particularly in terms of the sort of personality of SG. The art is stunning, though. I wish I could get prints of it and put it up on my wall. Like, it's gorgeous. But unfortunately, I didn't like the story. So I think I will probably try and like just push through and read the other two and then unhaul the series, potentially. But we'll see. Maybe I'll like the other two more. I don't know. I could not tell you where I think the story is going to go. So I'm very interested to see what happens from there. But it was one of my 23 in 2023, so that was good. And I gave it 3 stars because ultimately I did really like the art, because graphic novels are just always going to rate a bit higher for me. Next up, I have my first arc, which is Was It Good For You by Catherine Freeman. This was such a good arc to start with. So this is about Sophie and Michael. Sophie is obsessed with spreadsheets. She runs all aspects of her life on it. Her diet, her exercise plan, her schedule, all her appointments, and her dating life as well. She has a pretty bad breakup with a guy, and so she rates all of her future dates because she doesn't want to make the same mistake with this next guy. And she accidentally sends a copy of the spreadsheet to everyone in her phone book, one of whom is Michael, who she went on this disastrous date with that she only rated 2 stars. The date was pretty disastrous, but he had some stuff going on, and it's very much a grumpy sunshine, Sophie being the sunshine, but she is kind of just oblivious to the fact that Michael is quiet and shy, and it also has this stuff going on right immediately before the date. he finds Sophie really attractive, so he asks if they could try again, kind of out of pride as well, but says, let's go on 10 dates and see what you think at the end of 10. And the book is the 10 days and how they go from this 2-star date to, falling in love, basically. And it's such an interesting premise, which I really enjoyed. It's a little bit steamy. It's not massively steamy though, and the steam is quite far towards the end. So if you're not sort of looking for it to be like a big part of your book, it's a lot of it works towards it, and we do only get, I think, 1 or 2 or kind of 1.5 steamy scenes, so something to just bear in mind. But it was really enjoyable. I had a really good time reading it. It was very well written, and I've not read a book with a similar sort of premise. I also felt like Michael's life was just so rich. He had this like funny group of characters and his family and friends and the village that he lives in, and I really liked that. So yeah, I gave this 4 stars. I would really recommend it. This one is out now, so you can pick it up if you are interested. Next up, I then did a Read Your Shelves vlog. So this is basically where I have a jar of all of the books on my physical TBR, and I go through and pick one at random. And the Fates picked ACOTAR for my first book, so A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J Maas. So if you haven't read this, most of you will have done, but if you haven't, this is a book where it's basically a Beauty and the Beast retelling. So Feyre, his family are really struggling for food, etc., and she kills a wolf who it almost feels like is sort of daring her to kill him. And then a fairy barges into their house and says, right, a life for a life, you killed my friend, I'm going to take you for the rest of your life to live with me. And she goes and lives with the fairies, and that's only kind of the first part of the story. The rest of it is then a lot of info dumping about the rest of the lore for the rest of the series, because there's a spring court and all these other fairies and all these other courts. And I gave this 3 stars. I didn't enjoy this as much as I feel many people do, but I have been told that the rest of the series gets better, so I am going to carry on reading it. I had considered reading the second one this month, but I don't know if I'm going to get to it. But I enjoyed it enough. I'm intrigued to see where it goes from here. Also, I get a lot of ACOTAR spoilers on Instagram, so I do have an inkling as to where the story goes from here, in terms of the love triangle that is presented in book 1. So I don't know how I'm going to feel about that, but we'll see. So I'm interested to see what happens from there. I just found Feyre so annoying though, so I don't know that I want to spend any more time with her, but I know not all the books focus on her, so we'll see. So I gave that 3 stars. Next up, I read my second arc, and I do have a vlog for reading this one and Was It Good For You on my channel if you want to check it out. This is The Boyfriend Candidate by Ashley Winstead, and this is my second 5-star of the month. I absolutely love this book. So Alexis has a bad breakup with her boyfriend who basically says she's boring. That's why he breaks up with her. And she decides that she's going to have a one-night stand to get back at him and show that she's not boring. She is attempting to have this with Logan, who she just meets randomly in a bar. They are about to sleep together, and then there is a fire at the hotel. Logan carries her out, and some pictures are taken of them, and Logan kind of instantly disappears. Alexis has no idea why, until it turns out that he is a politician running for a seat in the Texas elections. And his political party ask her, or his campaign team ask her if she will agree to fake date him, because it would be really bad press for him if he is seen to be sleeping around, basically. So she agrees to fake date. I love this as a fake dating idea. I love fake dating anyway, but I just felt this was just such an interesting premise. And then it's also about Alexis kind of finding her voice and fighting for the librarians of Texas because she's a librarian. I just thought this was so well written. It was very sexy. The steamy scenes are not massively, I would say it's similar to Was It Good For You, and it's a big focus of the story in terms of leading up to it, but it only really happens at the end. But yeah, I just thought this was a really good time. I'd really, really recommend this one. Ashley Winstead is an absolutely fantastic writer. Then I read another arc, which is The Witch is Back by Sophie H. Morgan. This one is not out yet. The other 2 are already out, but I'm pretty sure The Witch is Back. Maybe it comes out in September, actually. So this one is about Emma and Bastian, who are witches, and they are literally bound to be together. And Emma has always loved Bastian her whole childhood. But Bastian basically leaves just randomly before they're about to get married. And 7 years later, he returns, and because his mum is sick, and it seems that his mum's health is sort of tied into the sort of curse elements of the fact that he didn't end up marrying Emma. And so he basically says, Emma, will you marry me? Like, I need you to marry me to save my mum. And so they then do get married, but it's then about them sort of living with that decision. I like the idea of this, but it just didn't work for me. I didn't love the writing style, I didn't love the pacing, and I did not like Bastian. I felt that he was just quite male, I think, or traditionally male. He was sort of presented in a way that I just didn't like the way that he spoke to Emma. So unfortunately, I didn't really like this one, so I only gave this 2 stars, unfortunately, but I love the cover. Then I started getting into my like Barbie reading vlog. So I read This Time It's Real by Anne Liang. This is a YA fake dating. As I've said, lug me a fake date. So Eliza is moved to a new school. Her family move around a lot, and she has to write an assignment which is about sort of the true love that you've experienced or something like that. And she feels really weird about writing about something that's actually true for this article because she doesn't really know anyone at school. So she writes about a fake boyfriend. And this article is published on their school website and is picked up by BuzzFeed and goes viral. And then she is offered a job with a publishing company. She really wants to be a writer, and the publishing company want her to continue to write about her boyfriend. But obviously she doesn't actually have a boyfriend. And this Kaz at her school is an actor, and so she basically begs Kaz to be her fake boyfriend, and he has a lot of negative press that is kind of affecting his success, and so he agrees as well because it would be good public press for both of them to fake date. I thought this was really fun. I gave it 4 stars. It's very well written, and I felt like you could kind of get behind what Eliza was dealing with. It wraps up a little bit too quickly in the way that most YAs do, to be honest. So it wrapped up a little bit quickly and had very sort of convenient ending. But as I say, I think all YAs are like that. You get used to it if you read as many as I do. But I overall thought this was a good time, and I think particularly for the audience, this would be very enjoyable. I also, whenever I talk about YAs on my channel, talk about whether or not it features like any kind of sex scenes or anything, and it doesn't. So if you are looking for a YA that you could recommend to some younger YAs in your life, then I think this could be a good choice. Then I read Belle's Tale by Mallory Reeves, which is a manga, a Beauty and the Beast, based on the new film with Emma Watson. I'm not going to go masses into this because I talk about it a lot in the reading vlog, but the art for this is weirdly blurry in the print, so it's really difficult to enjoy it. I don't think this story is served well in manga panels, so I just didn't have a very good time reading that one and only gave it 2 stars. Then I read Secretly Yours by Tessa Bailey. So this one and the second one, I think this is a duology, and I do own both of them. So Hallie has loved Julian her whole life, basically, since she was a teenager, but Julian moves away and she just has never found anyone else she wants to be with because she's just always been obsessed with him. And he ends up moving back, and she kind of wants to get with him or wants to see if he has feelings, but he doesn't really remember her. So she ends up writing secret letters to him, though that's not a major plot point, to be honest, despite it looking like it is. She writes these sort of secret romance books to him, notes to him, but this is while they're rediscovering feelings for each other in real life as well. Being Tessa Bailey, this book is incredibly steamy if you are interested in that kind of thing. It's also very possessive, so make sure that you're okay with that if you're okay with the sort of male character being very possessive about a woman. I gave this one 3.5 stars. I didn't love it as much as other Tessa Bailey books, but it is a good Grumpy Sunshine, and I think both characters have a lot of history in the way that Tessa Bailey books do. They're a bit longer for romances, so it's very rich, it's very interesting to read. It's just, you have to make sure you like that sort of possessive wording. And then I read Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams, which is the second in the When in Rome series. I really enjoyed the first one, and I did enjoy this one as well. This is about Annie, the little sister of Noah from the first one, who is Angel Annie. She's a virgin. She kind of has never really had a romance or a love, and it feels like she's almost stopped from doing that because of how her family see her. So the girlfriend from the first one, she basically says to Annie, like, I'll set you up with Will, my bodyguard, so that he can sort of fake teach you how to be in a relationship. He sleeps around a lot. He has a lot more experience in this. Let's get him to show you. And they end up having feelings for each other over the course of that time. I loved Will, such a like cute, lovely main character. These are closed door romances, and the reason I only rated this 4 stars is because I felt like it just didn't work for me to have so much of it focused around Annie learning about sex and stuff, to then not for us to not have it on screen. It was then just like, oh yeah, on book, sorry, you know, Will just showed her a good time kind of thing. And that's where it just doesn't work for me, unfortunately. But otherwise, I did really enjoy it. And then I obviously didn't write about Harry Potter. And then I picked Breast Cancer Now for my charity for July because it's an important charity for me. It also is pink and it was my Barbie reading month. And I donated £52 because I donate £1 for every 100 pages I read to a different charity every month. So I felt like that was a good month for that one. So that is it for this reading journal month. I really hope that you enjoyed. If you did, I would really appreciate a like. And if you haven't already, I would love it if you'd subscribe. In the description, I will have a link to my Instagram and my Goodreads if you want to check out any more content from me. Otherwise, I will see you in my next video. Bye.